I was thinking that we could start with the last session before I move on to questions that are not related to that. There was one question before the camera started. That was whether my experience or whether the experience of the gurus stay the same in each session. And it's a kind of yes and no question, because the intensity, depending on our own mind state at the time we're practicing, there are some variations in intensity and how clearly we can perceive the charge. But I found that with increased sensitivity and increased clarity, there is that sameness. Like when you look at the actual qualities of each guru. And there was one question about it. First, what qualities should I look for when connecting with Guru Rinpoche and Ishanata? So I realized that I probably should have talked a little bit more during last session, guided a little bit more. But I mentioned the qualities of, the three basic characteristics is a good starting point to see which one is emphasized. Is it the clarity or transparency? How much is that emphasized? And it's also related to physical body part of the head. And another is the aliveness or love, which is one characteristic connected to the heart, and also stability. And which one, I asked the question if anything stood out in that sense. So that's one good starting point. Also, differences in personality, like wrathfulness or gentleness, is a good thing to check out. In relation to those particular two, I would rather say that it's a matter of practicing them more and see for yourself, rather than me saying what qualities belong to each. But in my own experience, there is with Guru Rinpoche, there is the clarity aspect is really emphasized, and at the same time, there is a kind of wrathful intensity to it, and I also noticed that there is kind of this belly stability, whereas for me, when I experience Isha, it's the heart just takes over the body, so to speak. So heart quality, love quality is emphasized there. But still approach them with a clean slate each time and see if that is the case or not, like the way you experience it. Also, is one guru greater than the other in terms of spiritual maturity or greatness? And there was an addition, in the sense of, is one purer than the other? And in the case of those two, I wouldn't say so, no. They seem to have the same stage of maturity. And also, if we look how their spiritual biographies, it's the exact same description of their departure. So, if that counts for something, then it was the same attainment. But first and foremost, setting that aside, they seem to have They seem to have the same level of purity. It's not that which determines the personality, just like all of us have different personalities, which don't go away, it seems, fortunately. Is there any comments about? Was it useful, the session?
Yeah, but I wouldn't say I'm having the same experiences you're talking about. Experiencing them in the same way.
Mm.
I definitely get the wrathful intensity with Guru Rinpoche. But then I didn't get as much of the heart. I was actually feeling clarity with Isha.
Mm.
I'm not, I don't know if I'd describe it as heart or love, maybe. Very clear and light.
Mm.
I was glad you weren't leading, really, because you weren't feeding, you weren't feeding me anything, and therefore what came up came up. I found with Guru Rinpoche that, in fact, a strength and a sturdiness in in the body, and while I was sleepy during it, with Isha I found the head, the clarity, and that in the head, and a brightness in the head that actually went through the body. And then towards the end of the session, it was actually, I was kind of very much invigorated, and that was actually just keeping a clear mind and not presupposing that either stood for any. I was just glad that I didn't have that. The other thing was that the just the difference between the two, just in the one meditation session, it was good. It was a good experience.
Mm.
Very good experience.
Do you want to keep going this way?
If you want.
Yeah, no, I found Guru Rinpoche very familiar, and stable. And then Isha was, I was also glad, that you didn't do any guidance as well. It was nice just to have it open, and that was the strongest I felt Isha's presence. I also take the point you make about depending on the receptivity of the group and the individual and the mind state. It takes a few days for me to feel the transmissions, like they get stronger as the retreat goes on, so the more we're clear as a group. So later in the retreat is the strongest for me that I feel. So they were the strongest sessions that we've had for me, and definitely that was the strongest for Isha. It was like the loving, the kindness, gentle aspects felt like it was infinite, that it was just so powerful that it would last forever. And that was great. That was powerful, and it did go up, encompass my headspace as well, and body felt it felt revitalizing. It's interesting. I mean, in the context of this retreat and the news that we got yesterday, and then that you're saying that Isha's been on your mind independently for the last while, and now we're doing back to back Rinpoche and Isha, and we have all this cultural baggage with Isha stroke Jesus, but I have more familiarity as a guru with Padmasambhava, and it's really weird, interesting situation. But I'm just glad that I'm getting a hit, as it were, myself, from a practitioner point of view. I'm just glad to be here and getting the transmissions. So it was lovely. So thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that from like a like in Guru Yoga, that Guru Rinpoche would be more familiar at this point, since it's been practiced, or he's been practiced for the past years.
Something that came to me was, because recently I've been feeling that the relationship with Guru Rinpoche has been developing, or getting to a stage where it's much easier to like I only have to, with Guru Yoga sometimes at home, like it would only take me a few repetitions of Guru Rinpoche and to really feel his presence. So I feel like the relationship has developed. But having said that, when we switched to Isha, I felt like Isha was probably an easier presence to sit with, and even though it's so crystal clear, it was kind of like normal in a way. It was more like, I don't know, it wasn't like going into a state that was, I don't know, like it was just kind of easy and kind of normal, but very clear, I found. So I thought definitely easier to sit with, I think.
Yeah, in terms of like, as I mentioned, like the spiritual maturity being the same, in terms of benefit, it's also the same. But I have a feeling that, we were just talking, that for beginners starting Guru Yoga, I think the presence of some gurus are easier to it's easier with some gurus to detect the vibe, to detect that something is actually changing. Because in the beginning it might be like you don't know what you're looking for. You might have ideas about what it is. So that's just a personal reflection that I've thought about, because it's because there's a different vibe there.
What I've found with Isha is there's more of a chance for me to slip into a kind of blissful state with Isha than there is with Guru Rinpoche. There's something kind of slightly intoxicating about his energy. It's very loving, very kind, very warm, and it kind of like just, it's easy to kind of just slip away with it almost.
Yeah, I find that like I think I would describe it as like a transparency versus kind of I feel more light, that there is more light, so the body is being recognized as kind of having that light quality in it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which can be blissful, like
Yeah, it kind of feels, to me like suddenly you get this feeling of the light, just the body just kind of glowing, like with this warmth, with this love, and it's kind of intoxicating, but it's lovely. It's great.
Was that Guru Rinpoche?
No, Isha.
Okay.
No, it's totally opposite for Guru Rinpoche. For me, anyway, it's like, really, really stable, like crisp, clear, very light, and not intoxicating at all. Really, really stable. It kind of, there's, I wouldn't say it's kind of like the difference between like a really crisp, clear winter's day and like a really warm summer afternoon. A kind of difference in tone.
I did sort of feel Guru Rinpoche as like very bright liquid white light, like clarity. I did feel that. And Isha more as like a beetroot red colour.
It's kind of like, it's like golden for me, like shimmering golden light.
Yeah. I mean, my question in terms of insight is like,
Mm. Well, there are advantages and disadvantages to those qualities as main qualities, because with like intoxication can be a problem, and but on the other hand, dryness can be a problem, not including everything in the. But so of course, so practices focusing on stability and clarity, you can't just throw them out of the window and only practice guru yoga with one particular guru. There needs to be a framework that stabilizes the experience. But well, that I guess that is why Dzogchen have made the distinction between space and luminosity, and focusing on space first to have stability, and then. But I was just thinking, where I'm at in my practice, I find it very welcoming, that heart-based. Like I feel like it's been kind of missing.
You said their spiritual biography is the same departures, the same from this world, from the material world, was it, or
Yeah, how it's
documented?
how it's described. So Guru Rinpoche is said to have mounted a ray of light and gone to the heavens.
Oh, yeah. They're both virgin births as well.
Well, one was born out from a lotus.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm kind of leaning towards that symbolism, and the other two.
Yeah, but the significance of the symbolism, it's
Right.
in terms of if somebody wants to try and measure, their levels, their power, the symbolism is built around the energy, isn't it? I mean,
But I think that it describes. Mounting the ray of light, I can only see that as like symbolism for the light body phenomena, which is widely recorded in different cultures. And that's as the highest realization, highest attainment. And it's funny that actually the small rainbow body, where bodies shrink, is also documented in widely different traditions.
it's like a football team with Messi and Ronaldo, kind of. And a bunch of kind of giant.
For some reason, maybe it's because Isha's not coming from the Buddhist tradition. It does feel a little bit more human, Guru Yoga with him. He feels more human than Guru Rinpoche
Mm.
for some ways, but maybe that's just cultural conditioning.
Yeah, I think I know. I know what you mean. I think they were both human, but there's that emotional quality then, or emotional involvement that I find, which I think is needed in the West, as to cultivate it in oneself. I don't think the kind of distance is the right for our culture. Any other comments?
I can attest to what most have said. Was also sleepy a little bit during both. but the quality definitely. Guru Rinpoche, it lights up first. Usually the space around the body, you really notice the grander scheme of awareness, and the body becomes somehow insignificant in this whole big screen. And it was like the opposite with Isha. It was like really the body lightening up and full body, but it kind of stayed a little bit at this, not at the boundaries of the body, but it was very very noticeable that that's where the magic of this guru is. That's in the body, and it was very instant. That was very interesting too. It didn't come in very very smoothly or over minutes. It was like it was there from one moment to the other. And I think it can be beneficial for beginners actually because beginners have the problem in Western society to actually feel their body and to be in their body, and every meditation technique begins somehow there, so it might be easier to get this down at first, but I definitely see the enormous importance of Guru Rinpoche as well for this bigger regard, and I'm really looking forward to practice more with Isha to see how this develops, this dimension of spaciousness, of the big picture awareness. That's really something I'm looking forward to explore.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like not one up against the other kind of a matter like that. It's like benefits and disadvantages, in lack of a better word.
Yeah, but that's I think the great thing about the comparison right after each other, because it really stands out the contrast of the quality, and so it might seem like, whoa, this guy has nothing of this other guy, and this guy.
But those are actually these two are actually quite good to compare. Like it's a good match for comparison. Like if you took some other Buddhist master and Guru Rinpoche, it might be closer, and also on the other side, you find closer gurus.
Yeah, actually, 1 year ago we did Isha and Babaji and Tirumula, and the comments were, people at that retreat, the general thing I remember was that the Isha was a bit heavy, serious, like serious in a serious way, not how you were saying serious kind of yesterday, like it was kind of, I don't know, is that what you remember that, Joe?
Yeah.
And
Do you mean serious? I think
quite austere almost. That was my memory, that it was a bit austere, and I was more drawn to Tirumular's energy at that retreat. That's just 1 year ago, so I'm trying to figure what's changed in the last year, because this seems like a more warmer or more powerful, more slightly, different. So I mean, what happened there?
is it an actual question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe Isha went to a retreat as well.
No, maybe
Probably.
it's just a comparison of Isha and Rinpoche together.
Yeah, but we had a session with Isha and Tirumular and Babaji 1 year ago, and people were drawn to Babaji and Tirumular, and Isha was at that point it wasn't as
Yeah, but maybe if
Yeah,
you
but you-
compared Isha and Rinpoche You know,
back then,
compare- yeah, you
it
can-
would have like because you see things in relation to other things, right? So if you have like a bubbly love and a more serious love, then if you prefer the, I mean, then the
Yeah,
contrast
I
gets
understand,
different. Yeah.
I think we had the same problem with Isha last year. That it was the first time that Jesus had popped up.
And we were in a church
And
as
we were
well.
in church,
Oh,
and we were all slightly blown away. We were kind of overwhelmed that it just came out of nowhere. Because, and I remember at the time, that was a very interesting session because Tirumular was really light, in fact, very light,
Joyful
and we all
bright,
found
yeah.
that. And when we went to see where he lived in India, we had the same experience.
Yeah.
And Babaji had a kind of a different quality, but Isha did have, I mean, the Isha quality, I know we have to get used to it because I don't really know that much about it, I'm not that familiar with it, but it has that huge power and softness all at the same time, and it's very distinctive, I think, really different. You know, the others tend to be light. I mean, Guru Rinpoche, you know, I have a kind of a soft spot for him because he kind of got us to this point, and you know, we owe him a huge amount, and he's so easy to access. But I kind of think they're all. You've told us they're all doing the same thing anyway. There's no distinction, but it's kind of apples and pears to some extent. I think.
Yeah. And also, I mean, certain personalities of practitioners are drawn towards certain personalities in a teacher or in a guru.
Yeah, and we're so familiar with Guru Rinpoche, and he's so accessible, as is Yeshe Chogyal. You know.
But that's also, I think, a matter of practicing.
Of course, of course it's a matter of practice. And that's why I mean, if the Isha energy is so powerful now, be interested to see what it's going to be like in maybe a year's time, when we're very familiar with it, and you know, hopefully that would evolve, and you know, great things to come. Maybe.
just like on the comparisons, you know, like when we did Krishna before, it felt like much warmer love, much stronger love, like, and I mean, I don't know if this is just me, but compared to Isha, yesterday's particularly, I felt sort of there was more kindness in Isha's love. You know, does that make sense? Or is that like something I'm just coming up with myself, or?
No, I think that's a valid point.
Is it? Does that? I mean, just seems quite different. Like they're both love, but very different types of love.
Yeah, but there are distinctions in that as well. That's like finer distinctions, like between the main categories of distinctions, and then looking deeper into each of them, there are subtle or more obvious differences.
And is it just based on, like, to me it feels very much based on what I've seen, what's in my head previously about them. Does that make sense?
I mean, it might have an effect, but
It
it
has
will
effect on the
probably.
experience I have when I'm doing the Guru Yoga, what my opinion is of the Guru.
Of course, that can have an effect in practice, but then watch as you have less and less. When preconceptions start meaning less and less, and see if it changes.
Okay.
See if it remains the same.
Does it follow from that then that makes sense to have to change principal gurus from time to time, rather than just actually tapping into Guru Rinpoche all the time, that if it's Isha and then someone else then in a year's time or whatever, that in fact it's actually developing different qualities? Does that
I think there's an aspect to that, but I don't think that there will be like a continuing change of, to put it like that. I think that, but that can be achieved in other ways, in one's personal practice, and that is trying out different ones at different times, because the whole list is there and all of them can be accessed with the same Namo, name, Namaha mantra, or just Namo, name, or just name. And I've found in my practice that that has been the case. There's been there has been I've been drawn to different gurus at different times, regardless of who is the main guru, and that's completely fine. There is no problem. You're not bound to the main guru.
When you're practicing a particular guru, do you find it helps to know a little bit about that guru first, or have you tried doing guru yoga with a particular guru that you didn't know anything about, you just chanted their name and so, like observed the effects?
Yeah, first time I experienced the charge of Guru Rinpoche, I don't think I even read his name before. I just heard the mantra.
Oh,
And I think like the same with Krishna, like hearing the Hare Krishna chant his name
yeah.
also brought the vibe. And yeah. So yeah, I don't think that. I think that's extra stuff for to satiate the curiosity.
Yeah, I mean, like, because, I mean, for me anyway, I still kind of don't really know a lot about these different gurus. I haven't really read many Buddhist texts and stuff, so I'm eager to just try them all.
Yeah, try them first, and then because then you eliminate the contamination risk.
Is there a connection between like that Isha Jesus is the most like tuned into yoga in the world, like currently, and the strength of the transmission?
I don't know. There are other factors, I think, in the growth of Christianity historically.
If we're all like energy bodies sending out through nadis, like energetic vibrations, like, and if Jesus is pulsating away in this world through practitioner, you know, people, Guru Yoga basically, people singing his name and evoking his...
But I don't know. I can't answer that. Without possibly making things up. Do you want me to fake it?
Yeah, you wouldn't be the first.
Especially in regard to Jesus.
Yeah. There was a question connected to that. Can you talk a bit about our connections with other people and other sentient beings and with the natural world in general, please? There's a workshop that I'm pretty sure is online. Well, anyways, it's a regular workshop on retreats to feel that connection. And because the description of the energy body, both in Open Heart and in other, and in Buddhism, Buddhist traditions and other tantric traditions, is that there are channels, both in our body and in our aura, and that goes beyond our aura. So the workshop is, so that's like a conceptualization of the experience. The experience of actually feeling those channels. And those channels go to other people and other beings. So we have some more connections to some, which means then it translates to karmic connection, and less to others. But through that interweb, everyone is connected. So that's like a kind of a mental image that we can have for that experience of being completely connected, because it's first and foremost an experience. That's why that's why actually practicing in complete isolation will also have a benefit on all sentient beings. I mean, in one way you can say that, of course, like when we have families and all and stuff, and our practice, if it helps us be less focused on ourselves and our own small habits connected to that, it will have a benefit. But in the large context, there is a benefit to all beings. And the natural world, I mean, it's the same vital force, the same vital, like a vital energy that runs through all of life, which can also be experienced. That there is not this Carl life force and this other life force. It's the same thing, and it's just being recycled into other forms. Was that?
Yeah. So when we're doing metta,
Mm.
and we have like our own energy field, right? And we're holding hands with somebody, looking into somebody's eyes, and I can't help but imagine that our energy fields, like, you know, when you imagine your energy field as a big ball, that it's kind of connected, that it's all becomes all one, sort of. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, yeah. As an experience also, like that like we were practicing yesterday, and he said like sometimes it's just like there's no separation there, and that's the experience, because essentially there is no separation there. It arises. It's the same knowing, same basic space. So yeah, I mean, if we think of that energy field as being around us, and we actually connect through the palms, and also energetically through the heart and the eyes. So yeah, there is the connection. Like we connect to each other. Yeah.
Could you put that workshop? Could you tell us the website? Can you post it up or something?
Oh yeah, I'll have to find it, and then. Yeah.
Sounds good.
No, I hope it's recorded. But it should be. There should be some recording from some retreat. It has been practiced several times.
Okay. Thank you.
What is known in the state of Rigpa, and is there a difference between the natural state and the basic awareness? So no, there is no difference between the natural state and basic awareness, or just awareness. So what is known in the state of Rigpa? Rigpa, I guess the question comes from the fact that Rigpa means knowing, or knowingness. So, or knowing. So what is known? It is knowingness itself that then recognizes itself, and then meaning that the illusion of subject looking at object collapses, and there is just that seeing, which there's just that knowing, seeing, hearing that takes the place of any ideas of conceptual ideas of in the sense of when it comes to sound, that there is this three-dimensional space that the sound travels into our ears, and then we have this space confined in our minds that we hear. It just breaks together, and there's just basic space, and the knowing arising as basic space. So, knowingness itself is known. I mean, you can, yeah, I'm just thinking of better ways to say it, but there's always something wrong with a part of a sentence trying to answer that question. Because language isn't non-dual.
So you say awareness is the same as the natural state. Awareness isn't an aspect of being in the natural state.
No, they can be used synonymously. No, and just
Change.
basic presence is another one. Like a
Basic state.
and it's not separate from the phenomena. That's the point here. You realize that there is not a knower knowing something known. There is just knowingness.
Yeah.
Yeah, yesterday you said that phenomena arises as knowing, which was, I thought, a good way. I hadn't heard it. Because sometimes it's knowing of something or something knowing itself, or I thought it was good that sounds arising as knowing, or I thought that was, yeah, it made a difference.
Yes.
Yeah. That was good.
Yeah, one of it's easy to kind of, or one easy way to practice that in every single situation, well, as long as the eyes are open, is to notice the direction, the usual sense of direction, looking outwards, and then go back to the source. Is there anything there? And if you do that enough times eventually, or not enough times, one time is enough, but if it's done properly, it collapses. And you realize that there is no thing in here looking out. And nothing out there being. Like the collapse of inside versus outside.
I really like Rinpoche Kim's description here of zero dimensionality. The basic space is not the three-dimensional space. That could also be a form of meditation, like focus on the surrounding space, but it wouldn't be the basic space of awareness, because three-dimensionality sets things still into relation to each other. And the zero dimensionality, how Kim calls it, is just when this collapses and everything is as close and as far from each other. It's just complete collapse into this single point of awareness, or this single all of awareness.
There's no point. But the thing is that doesn't somehow magically it doesn't collapse our ability to detect where sounds come from at the same time. So that's the weird part. There's just a separation that is gone. Like So you can imagine, because it's quite an important point, because if you just say that if it collapses, like, it's just a mess of non-referentiality. It's like, okay, what the fuck is in relation to what? But that doesn't, yeah. So that remains what the separation is called.
Yeah. It's important. Yeah, I always like to picture that the optics and the eye doctors, you get these books where you can get close and you see only patterns, and then you move away and then you have these holograms, these animals even though you see the nature of this hologram, this is art, just the dots and the structures, it still appears as this elephant there, but there's no real elephant there. So it's probably, it is three-dimensionality is the elephant, and it still appears, but it's made out of this basic zero-dimensional field.
Yeah, you mentioned that you could probably make a meditation. That is called shamatha without support, and we used to use that as like as a precursor to Hatha Yoga. So one way is that you focus on the whole space in front of the eyes, the whole image, instead of focusing on something in particular. But it still involves a holding of the whole space, which means that there is effort, which means that it's not the zero dimensionality, because there is no effort involved in that. Also, you could feel the three-dimensional space of the room and use that as the object and go back to that. But it's the same. Shamatha without support, even though it has support, but it's not an object. So what we used to do was to use that and then shout to cut the effort. So you stabilize and then you shout to cut the effort, which is also why we shout after the shamatha practice.
I find it much easier to meditate with my eyes closed. But I try to do the, I've forgotten what word for it, at the end when we're doing I've forgotten the word for it. Hatha Yoga, sorry. When we're doing the Hatha Yoga, I try to keep my eyes open, just for that. Is there any benefit? I mean, I struggle with the Hatha Yoga, keep my eyes open. I certainly am not in as calm or as deep a meditation, when my eyes are open. But I keep at it. Am I supposed to keep at it and keep trying to keep my eyes open? Is there benefit in?
I think there is benefit to both. The benefit of not having them open is that you don't have the visual input and potential distraction from that.
Yeah.
The benefit of having them open is that we spend most of our times with our eyes open. So learning how to, and so because meditation isn't something that essentially happens in here. It is seeing through that whole dichotomy of inner and outer space. So when you have eyes open, try the thing that I just mentioned. Go back to see if there is a seer anywhere looking out. That might clarify it. But of course, I mean, you can do both, but there is benefit to, and should do both in that case. Yeah.
Not take the easy way out and just keep my eyes closed.
No, I also prefer having them closed. Yeah, but still,
It's beneficial.
it's worth it to kind of push through that initial. Struggle.
Yeah.
But they are great windows too when you start clarifying whether there is something here that separates the outer world from the inner world. Like that there is no window there. Okay, so maybe that's enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.